This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by lynda.com, the unparalleled online video training library. For a free 10-day unlimited trial, visit lynda.com/macvoices. And by Mac Voices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have another Take Control book from Mr. Joe Kissell. Joe, it's great to have you back.
Nice to be here as always.
Yeah, and we're trying to get a little bit ahead of the game this time by talking about the second edition of Take Control of 1Password. It is my favorite utility, password utility. I think it definitely is one of Joe's, if not Joe's favorite.
Absolutely. I've talked a lot about passwords and password security, and there are a lot of good tools out there. I mean, there's LastPass, there's Dashlane, there's RoboForm. There are lots of different tools that you can use to create passwords and remember them and fill them in. And a lot of them are very good, and I've tried as many as I can get my hands on. But really, 1Password is my favorite, and I would be lost without it. I could not get through a single day without 1Password. I've become very, very dependent on it, and I just love it. I've been using it almost since day one, almost since the day it came out, and it has really become a part of my life. So I'm very happy to have a book on it, and I tell people, hey, use something. It's like backups. Do something. You don't have to do what I do. Do something. If you're happy with something else, that's wonderful. But if you are looking for a better way to deal with passwords, 1Password would certainly be my top recommendation.
So now we have disclaimers out that we're both 1Password users. We really like it. This is the second edition of 1Password, and I think it's important to note that with the password manager, the world keeps changing, Joe. The idea.
Boy, does it.
Yeah. So this is one piece of software that absolutely, unconditionally has to be kept up to date, or it can expose all your passwords and a whole lot of other confidential information. And so that's why I'm excited to have you update the book as well as have a new version of 1Password out, because it just gives me that nice, warm, secure feeling.
Well, 1Password, the guys at Agile Bits are like, every time I look at any of my devices, I'm like, oh, new version, oh, new beta version, oh, new beta, because, 1Password is available on Mac, it's available on iOS, it's available on Windows, it's available on Android. And all four platforms are being very, under continuous development. There are new versions and new betas all the time. And that gives me a good feeling, because I know that the company is paying attention to it. When there is a bug, they fix it. When there's a new security problem, they deal with it. When you see a product that very rarely gets an update, an update once a year or whatever, you kind of think, well, is that really secure enough? And Agile Bits just gives me the warm fuzzies. It's not like it's just been that way this year. It's always been that way. They're working hard to make it easier to use and more powerful and more secure. And as you say, the world of passwords is constantly changing. The security threats are constantly changing. You need to stay on top of them. And the latest versions of 1Password really help you do that.
Now, you just said versions, because we are talking about versions for the Mac, versions for the iPad, iPhone, for iOS, and even versions for Windows.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things that has happened, I mean, I don't know if or when 1Password is ever going to get to the point that all four platforms, plus Apple Watch, I don't know if they're ever going to get to the point where they're all perfectly in sync feature-wise. But there has been a lot of convergence. So like in the last version of my book, I had to say, well, there's sort of an Android version, but basically ignore it because it's really lame and it doesn't do very much. And the Windows version, it's okay, but it's really far behind and it doesn't have this, and this feature. So now I'm going to revise the book, and I have to say, oh, actually, all those features that were only in the Mac version, oh, they've gotten pulled into the Windows version too. Oh, and the Android version too. And oh, this thing that used to be only in iOS, now that's in the Mac. And so I can just see with every new release there is a push to take whatever innovations they've done on one platform and move them to the others so that they are getting closer to feature parity, if not quite all the way there. And I like having to like delete all of my apologies, like, sorry, Windows users, you can't do this, or in fact, sorry, Mac users, you can't do this thing that you can do on iOS. And so there are a lot fewer of those now.
Joe, in all the interviews we've done, I don't think that's something we've ever talked about. Do you test and as extensively the Windows and Android versions as well as the iOS and Mac versions of these things?
It depends on the product. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I cover is inherently Mac or, Apple only. This is a book. So this book and my Dropbox book, probably, a couple others, I have explicitly said, I mean, like my Take Control of Your Passwords book, Take Control of Your Online Privacy. There are a bunch of books that are sort of platform agnostic. And this one in particular, I said, okay, I know that my audience is mainly Apple users, so I'm going to concentrate on the Apple platforms, but 1Password is available for all 4 platforms, and so I do cover Windows fairly extensively, and Android is sort of in between. I mean, I don't blow it off. I don't give it as much space for sure as iOS and Windows, but I feel like I want for everybody to use 1Password, regardless of which platform or platforms they happen to use. If you're a Mac user with also an Android phone, or you're a Windows user with also an iPad, or whatever the combination is, I want you to feel like there's enough information here that you know what it does and how to do the stuff. So for this book, certainly I have spent a lot of time in Windows, a lot of time in Android, learning what can be done and what the differences are. And so, again, there is obviously an Apple bias because I'm trying to cater to the largest portion of my audience, but I have tried to be as complete as I reasonably can with those other platforms as well.
Yeah, and that was not a challenge. It was just more a question because we here, obviously, Mac Voices, we tend to focus on the Apple world, and that there's some things that cross over into the other spheres. But yeah. I don't think I realized that you tested and reviewed some of those things.
Oh, sure. And now, of course, when I use Windows, I use it on my Mac. I have obviously, I have like. On the Mac that's usually sitting over there, that's actually in the shop right now, I've got Windows 10 running in VMware Fusion. On this Mac, I have Windows 7 because, there's differences. And on this Mac also, I have Android running in a virtual machine due to reasons. And sometimes I use Parallels, but I don't have any PCs in my office, but I do have ways of running other operating systems. And, I gotta say, I used to just like cringe every time I had to run Windows. I just like, oh, it's so awful. And, Windows 10 isn't awful. It's okay. It's different. There are some things that I don't prefer about it, and there are some things that I do prefer about it, but it's actually quite nice. And I can boot up my Windows virtual machine and say, oh, it's okay. Yeah, this is fine. So so kudos to Microsoft for sucking less. Sorry, I mean that as a left-handed compliment, but yeah. I mean,
Yeah, on that note, yeah, I so bad want to go down that path, and I won't.
Another time.
So we have a new version of 1Password. Let's talk a little bit about what you've covered in the book that's new, because one thing I will say about 1Password, that with the exception of when a genuinely new feature gets added, I'm so happy that I really don't have to pay that much attention necessarily because it continues to work just the way it did.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Well, here's the thing. When you talk about new features, the book has been really outdated for a long time. So basically, we released the book, and it was in sync with the version of 1Password for Mac and Windows and so forth that was available at that time. And then Agile Bits goes and changes one of the versions, and we're like, we should really do an update to the book. And and in fact, we have a little bit of time to do that. Maybe we should plan an update for next month or whenever it is. And so we'll say, Agile Bits says, hey, does that work for you? And they're like, well, actually, we are planning another major update or adding a new feature, whatever, to this other platform in 3 months. So if you release a new book next month, it's going to go right out of date. So why don't you wait? And then we wait until they're ready for their new version. But then, Apple goes and releases a new operating system or something, and then we don't have time to do the update. And it's just been this back and forth for literally years. I have felt really uncomfortable that the book has been out of sync with reality. And yet, every time I have time to update the book, it doesn't work for their schedule. And every time it works for their schedule, it doesn't work for mine. So finally, we reached this point at which, all the different versions have been updated, and I have had some time. And so we have this new version. Now, today, when we're recording this, it's before the actual new release of the Mac version. In fact, I'm not 100% sure what they're going to, what version number they're going to call the new Mac version. So we'll just say the new Mac version. But they have been adding features for this whole time, for years. So back to the original statement, like you said, new features, I'm going to talk about some features, and some listeners and viewers are going to go, that's not new. That's been around for 2 years. And I'm going to say, yes, I know it's been around for 2 years, but it hasn't been in the book for 2 years because the book has been so far out of date. So I have to sort of bracket it that way. That said, could we talk about some new features?
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair introduction, because there is a lot of stuff here that probably many of us have already seen to one degree or another, but maybe we haven't taken full advantage of it, and now we will be able to.
Okay, so I'm going to start with something that really is genuinely new, and that is 1Password for Teams. So as of this moment, and probably still at the time that you can see and hear this, 1Password for Teams is in a public beta testing, so it's not secret anymore. You can read all about it on the web, or you can try it out for yourself, but it hasn't been officially completely rolled out for just anyone in the general versions of 1Password. So 1Password for Teams is not a new product exactly. It's a new service that you can use with the Mac version, iOS version, and so forth. And it's a way for businesses or organizations or families or any other group to sync and share passwords with each other in a much simpler and more secure way than you could do in the past. So the old way was, all right, I'm going to create a vault, the container for my passwords. This is just my vault. And then, you know what? I'm going to create a second vault that's just going to contain my family passwords or the passwords that other employees at my company need to know. And then I will put that vault in a shared Dropbox folder. And I'll go into put it in a Dropbox folder, go into Dropbox, share that folder, invite my family member or teammate or whatever, and then they will install 1Password. They will double click on that vault in the shared Dropbox folder, and they'll add that vault to their copy of 1Password, and so it'll sync through Dropbox. But the whole process was kind of clumsy and cumbersome, and it required that both people already have 1Password set up in a certain way, and both are using Dropbox, and just sort of a lot of steps. And even then, you don't, like, if I'm sharing my passwords with you, I could decide to stop sharing that Dropbox folder, but I have sort of no finer grained control in that. So the new system is totally different. With the new system, you sign up at the 1Password website for this new thing. You give your group, organization, team, whatever, a name, and then you, as the administrator, can invite other people to join your team, and you can have different teams. You can have, I have my I have one or more teams, then each of those teams can have different groups. So let's say I work at a big company, and I have one set of passwords that's just for the marketing people, one set of passwords just for the salespeople, one set of passwords that's just for the engineers. Well, I can have 3 separate vaults, and they're all part of my big team, but I can invite different people to each. And for each person, for each vault, I can say, well, this person gets read and write access, or this person is read only, or this person can delete things, or this person can invite other people to the team. You have really extensive control over who can do what. And if an employee, leaves the company, you can just disable their account, or you can suspend an account temporarily. If one of your employees or family members forgets their password, you can reset it for them. And all of this syncing and sharing and stuff happens through the cloud, but it's a service that AgileBits controls. So you don't have to use Dropbox. You don't have to use iCloud. You're not dependent on any of those other things. It's all mediated by AgileBits. So during the beta process, it's free for everyone to use. They have not yet announced the ultimate pricing. I'm kind of imagining it's going to be in the neighborhood of like $5 per user per month or something, but I don't actually know that. And in fact, I gather that it's going to be less expensive for families and more expensive for businesses. So I can't speak to that authoritatively because I literally don't know, but not an unreasonable price. But this is addressing something that businesses and nonprofit organizations and even families have been asking for a long, long time. Yeah, I know we can sort of share vaults now, but it's awkward. Give us a real powerful way to share that gives us a lot of control, and that's what 1Password for Teams does. So I'm super excited about that, and the book has a whole chapter on 1Password for Teams. When you turn it on, it sort of changes a number of things. Certain features are added, certain features are removed or altered. And so I go into all those details. But basically, it's optional. You can use it or not use it. But it's a different way of syncing and sharing that I think a lot of people are really going to love.
Today's Mac Voices is sponsored by lynda.com, the unparalleled online video training library. Get a free full 10-day trial at lynda.com/macvoices. If you're interested in learning or in acquiring new skills or advancing the skills you already have, there's a lot to like about lynda.com. Lots of little things, but this time, let's focus on some of my favorite big things. First, the breadth of training available. 4,100 plus courses in audio and music, 3D and animation, education, design, business, and a whole lot more. Second, the depth of training. It's rare that you'll only find 1 or 2 courses on any given subject. Sure, if the subject or program is new, but for topics like design or video, there are over 500 courses to choose from. So you aren't going to just scratch the surface, you're going to take a deep dive into whatever you need or want to know about. Third, the instructors. These aren't just talking heads or narrators, but are actual experts in their fields, people who live and breathe their areas of expertise. That makes a big difference since they know what to teach and how best to present it. No one reads from the manual. They take you through the steps on the path to understanding. Fourth, the constant updates and additions to the lynda.com library. lynda.com is constantly adding new courses in current and new topics. Every month, sometimes every week, a few more get added to the collection, so that everything I said about their library is not only true today, but it will be true tomorrow, next week, and next year. Fifth, the convenience. With the lynda.com iOS apps, I can take lynda.com anywhere, anytime, online or offline, learning where and when it suits me on my schedule, not someone else's. And if you have an annual premium membership, you can even download and view lynda.com courses offline on your desktop or laptop. Sixth, the price. For a single, affordable fee, I have access to everything lynda.com has to offer. No tiers, no special levels, everything. Legacy content, new content, videos, instruction pieces, the iOS apps, monthly magazine type shows, and much, much more. Seventh is the fact that you can try it all out for yourself right now by visiting lynda.com/macvoices. When you do, you get a free, full 10 days of access to the entire lynda.com collection. If you can stay awake that long, that's 240 hours of training just waiting for you to try. Your biggest problem during those 10 days is going to be trying to decide what to watch first. Once you subscribe full time, well, you're probably still going to have that same problem, since there's so much great information on lynda.com. That's lynda.com/macvoices for a free, full 10-day trial. Do it now and learn something new and useful today. Thanks to lynda.com for their ongoing support of Mac Voices. The way you describe the fine-grained controls, I think, is the most exciting part for me, because I'm involved in a similar project that has nothing to do with passwords, with file sharing, and it's almost like syncing. You think it should be simple. You think, okay, I just want to turn on this permission for that person, this one for the other, and if it's not built right, boy, it can make your head hurt.
Yeah, it really can. So I think that, the newest feature and the one that most people are going to be excited about is probably 1Password for Teams. Now, there's something else that I personally am more excited about, and this isn't new, but it's new-ish, and I just started using this recently, and I'm tickled. It's time-based one-time passwords, or TOTPs. And that sounds really technical and boring, but it's not. So when you have a site or service like Dropbox or Facebook or Microsoft's services, like there are many companies that offer optional two-step verification. So the way this usually works is you turn on this feature, and then when you go to log into your account, it asks you for your username and password as usual, but then it also asks you for a numeric code that you get on your phone. And sometimes they send it by SMS. More often, they send it to they use an authenticator app like Google Authenticator or Authy. So basically, you just have this app on your phone or iPad, and you say, okay, I've logged into this, and okay, Dropbox, and it's going to display a 6-digit code, and that 6-digit code changes every 30 seconds. So you have to enter the code within 30 seconds or you can't log in. So type username, password. Oh, I got to pull up my iPhone. Got to unlock it. Go to 1Pass or go to Authy or Google Authenticator. Unlock that. Go find Dropbox. There's my 6-digit code. I got to hurry type it in within 30 seconds, and then I'm logged in. So the reason you do this is for greater security, because somebody needs not only your password, but also your phone and also the unlock code for your authenticator app and so forth. But it's cumbersome. And I really hated always having to pull my iPhone out of my pocket to open my authenticator app to get my one-time passwords. So now you can do this in 1Password directly. You can do it in the Mac version, which is fairly new. You can also do it in the iOS version, which is a little bit less new. And so there's this really cool process. So like if you turn on two-step verification in, let's say, Dropbox, and in fact most of these services, you go through the process and it displays a QR code on the screen, one of those 2D black and white barcode things. So you go into 1Password, you go through this little process, and 1Password puts up a little window that looks like a scanner, and you literally drag this window over. It's see-through, so you drag it over top of the QR code. It's like ding ding, it scans it, and that's it. It by scanning that code, it has added support for that one-time password in 1Password. So the way this works in real life, once you've done that one-time setup, is like, okay, ready to log into Dropbox on a new device for the first time, enter my username, passwords, asking for my one-time code now. So I do the same thing I always do. It's like Command Option Backspace. The little 1Password mini thing pops up. I find Dropbox in there, and oh look, right there in my 1Password mini pop-up window, there is the one-time code, and I can just go click, copy, paste, done. So it's so much easier than having to use a mobile app to generate and get these one-time codes. I'm also happy that that I can get rid of an app, so I don't need Authy anymore. Nothing wrong with Authy, but it was like another app I had to think about and find and keep updated and so forth. And now I don't have to worry about it anymore because that capability is built into 1Password and it's built in across platforms. So super happy about that. It makes two-step authentication a lot simpler and easier.
Yeah, anything that makes two-step authentication easier is a really good thing, because I think there are a lot of us that, and there are times on certain services, me included, you stop and say, oh, do I really want to have to go through that extra step? I mean, because to its credit, 1Password has made passwords a whole lot less painful to start with. So now I'm adding back that pain. And so if 1Password can take away some of that pain, again, wow, so much the better. So much the better.
So I'll mention a couple of other new things.
Please.
One that is brand new, just period, is support for something called DiceWare. Now, this might be a little bit odd, but stick with me. So there is this method of generating passwords called DiceWare. And the way it works is you go to some a website and you can see these lists of words, thousands and thousands of words. They're all numbered. You get some actual dice, physical dice, or at least one die, and you roll it a bunch of times. So let's say you're looking for a 5-digit number. So you roll the die 5 times, and each time you write down the number, and it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or whatever it is. Then you go look up word number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in this list, and oh, that's kitchen. So you write down the word kitchen, and that is the first word of your new password. And then you do this as many times as you want. If you want a 3-word password or a 5-word password, you keep rolling the die to get more numbers to look up words on this list. And the idea of this is that you're creating long passwords that get their strength from their length. I mean, ordinary English words like kitchen are not strong passwords at all. They're terrible. But if you put enough of them together, that the sheer length of them gives them a lot of entropy, and it overcomes the lack of numbers and special characters and so forth. So DiceWare is a very popular kind of manual method of creating secure passwords, with the benefit that since it's all composed of ordinary English words, they're a lot easier to remember. The downside, of course, is that they have to be much longer than ordinary passwords in order to be as secure. So DiceWare it's nice. It's an interesting concept. It is mathematically sound as long as you use enough words and a long enough word list. The reason I have sort of never cared about DiceWare is that, well, I got 1Password. Like, I mean, if I can say hey, 1Password, generate a 50-character random password for me. I never even look at it. I have no idea what the password is. It doesn't matter. It gets stored automatically. It gets entered automatically. I never have to memorize it. But there are situations in which you really do need to memorize a password. I'm thinking, for example, of the master password that you use to unlock 1Password. You have to remember that because 1Password can't remember it for you. And you need to have a good password for, to log into your Mac. That's something that, you're going to need to do that when 1Password isn't running yet. And so there are a bunch of things like that where you might need a password that is long, secure, and yet memorable. So now 1Password has that capability built in. So you can still choose the length, but you no longer have to actually get dice or look up words on a list. It does all this internally for you. It's based on DiceWare. They have a much longer word list, and it's faster and simpler, but you get the same end result, a long, secure password that's composed of words you can actually remember. So for those who need those sorts of passwords on occasion, it's really nice to have that built in.
Joe, I'm just a little surprised at this, and I'm taking your word that if you string enough of these together, the entropy is sufficient. But I would think that they would be a lot more vulnerable to a brute force attack, an English dictionary brute force attack. And I realize I just said English dictionary, so maybe if you throw a French word in there, it helps a little. But
yeah, so I sort of talk about this, the math of this a bit in Take Control of Your Passwords. But let's imagine you have, let's just say a 2-character password, just to keep it super easy. If each of those characters can only be a digit 1 through 10, then you only have 100 possibilities for that 2-digit password. If each of those characters can be the digits 1 through 10 plus the letters A through Z, now all of a sudden you have 36 possibilities for each of those slots. If you can also add uppercase letters, and punctuation and special characters, now you have like 90-some possible characters for each slot. So a brute force attack is going to have to take 90-some time, to the power of the number of different characters there. So the first thing that DiceWare does is it gives you you have to think of each word in a DiceWare password as a character, because as you say, a brute force attack will use a dictionary to try every word. But instead of having just the numbers and the letters and the punctuation, there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of items in each slot. So it's, tens of thousands times tens of thousands times tens of thousands, and that's one of the things that gets your entropy. Now, there's that old, XKCD comic about correct horse battery staple, using that as a password to get fairly high entropy. And as has been shown since then, in theory that makes sense. In practice, that's too weak. It's too few words, and the words are too short. But if you had, let's say, a 5-word passphrase, and if maybe you mix it up a little bit by putting some unknown special character in between the words, it's not a space, maybe it's a pound sign, it's something else. By doing little things like that, you can all of a sudden take what is already huge entropy, because each character has so many different choices, and make it even greater by not giving the potential attacker any clues to what those intermediate characters may be. So as long as the word list is long enough and you have enough words in the passphrase, mathematically it's still okay.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I was a little surprised when you were first describing it, but yeah, now it makes sense, and I feel a lot better about it.
I'm here to make you feel better.
We appreciate it. Looking at the clock, Joe, we've been at this for a little while. Any other? I'm sure there's some other features, but any other high point features you want to hit, even just briefly, before we wrap it up?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that is not really new, but that I did not cover in the previous version of the book, is using the TouchID on your iPhone, 5S or later, and also the much newer and much better way since whatever iOS 8 or whatever it was, that 1Password with extensions integrates into not only Safari but other apps as well. So now I can go into whatever Slack or some app on my iPhone, and there's a 1Password button right in it, and so I no longer have to do all this extensive switching back and forth and copying and pasting. Sometimes you do, but a lot more apps, hundreds of apps, have built-in support for 1Password. And because of this extension, while you are in Safari, you can say, "Oh, I'm on a page that needs a password." So tap TouchID, and my password is filled in, which is just far, far, far simpler than what it was, a couple of years ago. And on top of that, if you happen to have an Apple Watch, I don't, but if you do, the iOS version of 1Password also includes an Apple Watch app. So you can, it's not, I mean, it's not the full 1Password on your wrist, but what it lets you do is say, here are my top however many, 5, 10, 20, the passwords that I care about the most, that I most often need to have access to when I'm not on, like in the real world when I'm not on a device, and you can put those securely on your Apple Watch from the iOS app. And so for people who are Apple Watch owners and who need to get at their 1Password data, it's quite handy.
I honestly don't think I realized there was a 1Password app for the watch. So
yep.
Now I've got something to do for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and I will just say, like, all the things we've discussed they're really the tip of the iceberg, because every page in this book is just like covered, if you look at the change tracking, like covered with changes, because on all the different platforms, a lot of things have moved around, icons have changed, names have changed, little new features added, taken away, moved around. So there's so much that is different in 1Password across platforms since the last time this book came out, that I was sort of embarrassed about it. Like it'll give you a general idea, but it's really not going to line up with what's in there, and now it does. So if you had the old version of the book, there will be, of course, upgrade pricing. I don't know, as of the time we're recording this, I don't know what the upgrade pricing will be, but we always give a discount to people who had the old version. And we want to make sure that everyone has the latest and most useful information. And this is especially the case if you've started using a new platform. Well, I was using 1Password only on Mac. Now I'm using Windows as well, and we're going to give you the latest information.
And folks, we often say this at this point. This is a great addition to the Take Control library, to Joe's personal set of publications. But this is one piece of software you really do need to go and get. If 1Password is not your thing, fine. Go, as Joe said earlier, go get something else. But if you are just struggling with written down passwords on snippets of paper, or your password is kitchen, then it's way past time. And so this book will get you up to speed and start taking advantage of everything 1Password has to offer. And obviously Joe has spent a lot of time on this version, as well as every other version, but this version especially. So you'll be right up to date. And Joe, it's of course takecontrolbooks.com.
Right on.
Good. Hey, it's good to see you. I'm sure as we get into 2016 that there are one or two other things on the plate.
The list is long.
The list is long? Okay.
The list is long. I just, as I'm looking over all the titles, either the smaller updates or the medium-sized updates, the brand new titles that might happen, right now, today, there are so many variables, and we're just sort of waiting for different things to happen out there in the world. And, as is the case with 1Password, when you're writing about somebody else's product, you are bound to their schedule, and things just change. So there's a lot I don't know about the order in which things are going to happen, and I kind of have the feeling right now that like late summer 2016 is going to be a really busy time for Take Control. That's my prediction at this point. There will of course be things before then, but it looks right now as though a lot of things might be piling up sort of around then. But in any case, there are lots of good things ahead.
Well, good news for us. Maybe not so good for you. Good news for you. But in any case, you're always welcome. We always enjoy talking to you and hearing what's new, because I
enjoy being here.
We always learn something. That's the best part. So we'll see you again soon.
Absolutely.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. Take Control of 1Password, second edition by Joe Kissell at takecontrolbooks.com. Go get it. Go get 1Password at agilebits.com. You will not regret it. Please, please, for your own safety, please do it. Until the next time, thanks for watching.